welcome back to Newfoundland and Labrador Studies 2205. This is Unit 3, The Country Grows, Section 4, Lesson 2, on the Newfoundland bank crash. I'm Miss Fleming. Let's get going on this lesson. The day of the Newfoundland bank crash became known as Black Monday. On December 8, 1894, two banks, the Union Bank and the Commercial Bank in St. John's, closed their doors, never to open them again. A contributing factor to this was a decrease in the fishery which began in the 1880s. Most merchants had to borrow significantly more money from banks to stay afloat. And by 1894, 6 mercantile firms owed the Commercial and Union Banks a total of $2.5 million. In order to support these merchants, the banks borrowed money from British banks. However, when the British banks called in their loans on December 8th of that year, the Union and Commercial Bank did not have the money to repay them. So let's talk about the immediate fallout first. The Commercial Bank, which is depicted here on the right, turned to the merchants for repayment. But with much of their assets tied up in fish that had not gone yet to market, repayment was impossible. The Commercial Bank's credit was suspended, and it was forced to close its doors. News of the Commercial Bank spread quickly, and clients of the Union Bank and the Savings Bank rushed to withdraw their money. The Savings Bank barely survived, but the Union Bank did not. Considering banknotes were the main form of currency at the time, which now, of course, we think of dollar bills, but they were called banknotes then, they were temporarily rendered worthless, and savings accounts decreased in value overnight. The Prime Minister here, Augustus Frederick Goodrich, resigned amidst a controversy. He was also involved in the bank boards and was a prominent businessman, so he was very tangled up in the mess. Apprehensive of the fallout, Governor John O'Brien requested the Royal Navy send a warship to St. John's for fear of, quote, disturbances. There was further aftermath after that. Following this, the government guaranteed all Union banknotes for 80% of their value, so meaning 80 cents for every dollar. And the commercial banknotes were guaranteed for 20%, meaning 20 cents for every dollar. 3 large mercantile firms went out of business after the crash, which affected approximately 19,000 people who were dependent on them for employment. Other firms suspended operations temporarily as well. The government was on the edge of bankruptcy after the crash and was very concerned about the interest on public debt, which was due in London on January 1st, 1895. If not paid, the country would have to default on their loans. I wanted to mention the 2 coins here depicted. I was talking with my parents as I was preparing the notes for this lesson. We are all history buffs and enjoy discussing it. And these 2 coins here, a 5-cent piece and a 1-cent piece, were from Newfoundland in 1894, the year of the bank crash. They have Queen Victoria depicted on the back, and these coins are very rare. My great-great-grandparents had saved them, and they managed to get to my grandmother and to my mother after that. And the thing is, these coins, where they weren't even worth $1, they were considered worthless, and my family kept them, which I'm glad now that we have. The threat of bankruptcy was thwarted by Robert Bond. He was a senior member of government at the time. He managed to negotiate loans with Canadian and British banks. He did so by putting up his own assets to shore up the savings bank. So to make the savings bank stay afloat, he actually used his own assets to guarantee so that loans could be distributed to the savings bank. Canadian banks quickly began to open locations in St. John's and eventually some outports. Depicted here are the Bank of Montreal, the Bank of Nova Scotia, and the Merchant Bank of Halifax, which later became the Royal Bank of Canada, and all of these buildings are in downtown St. John's. The Bank of Montreal became the government's banker, and Canadian currency became legal tender in the country. There was still Newfoundland currency, but Canadian currency could be used as well. Additionally, There was a legal investigation into the banks, which is discussed in the video on Brightspace, which you'll watch when you do your activity. So now it's time to review. I'm going to ask you to please complete the activity I have for you in Brightspace, your historical significance chart, and your reflection, and have a great day.